Hello and welcome to GoldsQUAD Online. My name is Emily and I'm the Creative Wellbeing Admin Assistant at Derby Quad. GoldsQUAD is a relaxed, friendly group for anyone over 50 who is interested in creativity, learning new skills and trying new challenges in a supportive environment and working with other people. Sessions are led by creative practitioners and visiting artists. In today's session, Philippa Larkam is going to show us how to do a Korean patchwork flat fell seam. For this, you will need a needle, some cotton organdie fabric, thread, a bone fold tool, an iron and a ruler. Let's get started.
Hi, just wanted to show you how to do a Korean patchwork flat fell seam or samsol. I've got some cotton organdie here which I've cut into little squares, and I've got a hearer marker, but you could use the side of the back of a knife if you wanted a dinner knife. I've got a ruler. I've got this lovely little roller by Clover, but you can use obviously an iron, and I'm using some milliner's needles from John James needles, a size 10. If that feels a little bit too fine or a little bit too fiddly to thread, then you can just about get away with a size 7 embroidery needle. But it's worth having a little go at this because you've got very fine fabric, so you only need a fine needle to work with. So what we're going to do is we're going to make one of the flat fell seams. So on one of the pieces, I'm going to use my hearer marker, and I've got 1/4 of an inch here from the raw edge of the fabric, and I'm just going to put a little score line in, which hopefully you can just about see, and then I'm going to fold that over onto its self, and just wanting to just make sure that that's nice and 1/4 of an inch over the whole piece. And then I'm going to take my next piece, and with the corresponding same width of fabric, I'm going to score a 1/2 an inch seam and do the same thing, fold it over. Now, on this type of fabric, you haven't got a wrong side or a right side, but it is quite useful to know when you're adding on the different seams and doing the different pieces of the patchwork, which, here's an example of one of them. Can you see that I've got some little tags here which have marked the front and the right side of my work? So all I'm going to do is take a little stitch, and this is now going to become my right side of my fabric, and I'm just going to tie a knot in it and have some little ears. These will come out once you've finished, but it just identifies which is the right side. So do that on every piece that you do. I'll just do it on these two just to show you. And then I'm using a variegated thread. You can use any kind of thread that you have got hold of. I find the variegated quite interesting because obviously it's got a gradation to it. This is just an ordinary 50 weight sewing cotton. So it's one of these by Metler, and they're quite nice to work with. You could use just usual sewing threads. You could use stranded thread, not quite as strong, but you could do one single strand of that and that would work really nicely. When we're doing the knots for this now on the end of the thread, lay your end of your thread along the length of the needle and wrap it round a couple of times, and then hold on tight and pull the needle through those wraps, and that should make you a nice fine knot, and then just trim off the tail. So as neat as you can get it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take both of our folded over pieces of fabric with the raw edges on the inside, so we're working with the right sides facing outwards. So I'm just lining those up. Mine's one slightly a little bit bigger, so it's no problem, we can trim that at the end. And I'm just going to take my needle up into the fold and just very gently push the knot up inside just to get it out of the way. And then what we're using is a whipping stitch or a whip stitch. So nice little stitches into the fold of both folds of the organdie, and just get yourself into a rhythm. If you're using a thimble, then that's absolutely fine. But I'm literally just, you see, just working on the very edge. Don't worry too much if the stitches vary. We are doing this for nice and peaceful times rather than making it really everything absolutely perfect. So just keep working along and joining them together. Some of the Korean pieces that I've seen, they're very, very close together. But as we're using this as a more sort of decorative cover for our fabric book, it's fine if we don't have them too close together. You could also use silk threads for this, use finer threads. If you wanted to, you could use finer sewing threads if you have them, either a 60 or an 80 weight, but just check out that they're not going to break too much. I find these 50 weight are absolutely fine. So just nice and gently coming along and doing your whip stitch. So it's quite a usual stitch for us to use, but not what we usually use in patchwork. So that's the beginning of it being slightly different. So once you get to the end, leave your needle in your work, wrap your thread round a couple of times, and then pull your thread through that little wrap, and then that knots the end of your work. So it keeps it all nice and neat. So the next thing we're going to do then is open out our piece of work, and I'm going to just roll mine with this little roller, but you could just press it if you want to. And you can see here that I've got a little bit of an overlap of the fabric, and that's absolutely fine. I'm going to use my rotary cutter just to square that off. If you haven't got that, just draw a line and then cut it with a nice sharp pair of scissors. And whilst I'm here, I'm just going to do the other side as well. So just lining that up, just trimming that down. Okay, so that's the first bit of the seam done. Now what we need to do is fold this back over again, and I'm going to expose just where the seam is, and I'm going to kind of give that a bit of an iron on both sides as well, just to flatten where the seam is. So I've got the longer bit of the seam at the back, and I'm going to lay my ruler onto the line of the 1/4 inch, and then get my hero marker and score along the line created by the 1/4 inch, and then that folds over, can you see, onto the over the top of the raw edge. So what a flat fell seam does is it actually enables us to make a flat seam. So now I can fold that over so that, if you imagine that sticking, yeah, that's how I've tucked that underneath and then fold it over. And again, if you want to give it a little bit of a roll. And so the final part now is that we need to fold these up together. So take your ruler again, and on that folded edge, the one that's not sewn, line up your ruler, and then with the hero marker make another score line. Next, that enables us to fold those two seams together like that, and then we're going to do exactly the same as we've just done and whip stitch those together. So again, line your thread up along the needle, wrap it round twice, pull your needle through the wrap, pull your thread tight, and there's your little knot. I find using little embroidery scissors quite good for this because it is quite fine. And then I've got my two seams, just see, two seams together. So I'm going to take my thread up into the fold again to lose the knot. Pull that up nice and gently, and then I'm going to do whip stitch across the top here. And what's nice with the variegated, obviously, is it changes as you stitch with it, so it adds a little bit of colour into the seam, which I quite like. So I'm just now stitching along that top edge, and keep working your way nice and gently along. You can cut out quite a few bits and pieces and just keep adding them, so it's really nice to do. So you don't need to worry too much about how it all is going to come together. You can be quite, dare I say, organic about it and let it just develop. You can get the Organdie in different colours, and in the pack there's some green and some blue and pink and cream and white. Because it's cotton as well, you could even, if you wanted to, dye it. But it's rather nice to work with because it's got a stiffness to it, which is really useful. The other thing I'd also say is, you can use rami as well, which is a sort of an open weave fabric, which is related to the nettle family and is used a lot in the Far East for fabrics. At the moment it's quite difficult to get hold of because there aren't many of the flights coming out of that part of the world. So now I'm at the end, wrap round a couple of times on my needle, pull the needle up through the wraps and cut that off. So then that's secured and anchored, and that's my flat fell seam completed. Again, just ease it open, and using a roller or the iron, just flatten that seam, and there is your seam worked on both sides, and then you're ready to add your next piece. So thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the session. Please send any creations to creativewellbeing@derbyquad.co.uk. For more information on GoldsQUAD, please visit www.derbyquad.co.uk and search GoldsQUAD.